The transport ship landed at the Terran Naval Academy with a soft thud. Colonel Jake Morrison stepped off the ramp and looked around at the clean white buildings. Everything was perfect here. Too perfect. The walls were bright and new, nothing. Like the dark metal corridors of the warships he had called home for the past 5 years, Morrison walked slowly toward the main building. His left arm was made of metal and plastic now. The real one had been torn off during the Battle of Kepler. Station. His face had scars that ran from his left eye down to his chin. The doctors had offered to fix them, but he kept them. They reminded him of what war really looked like. Students walked past him in their clean blue uniforms. They were young, maybe 18 or 19 years old. Their faces were smooth, and their eyes were bright. They had never seen death or felt real fear. Morrison envied them and felt sorry for them at the same time. "You must be Colonel Morrison," said a voice behind him. Morrison turned around. A woman with gray hair and kind eyes stood there. She wore the uniform of an admiral. "Admiral Carter," Morrison said. He tried to smile, but it felt strange on his scarred face. "Helen, please. We fought together at New Babylon, remember?" She walked beside him as they headed toward the academy. "I know this is hard for you, Jake. Teaching is very different from fighting. Why did you ask me to come here?" Morrison asked. "I am not a teacher. I am a soldier. These kids need to learn from someone who has been in real combat," Helen said. "They think war is like a video game. They believe their computers and robots will always save them." Morrison looked at a group of students sitting on benches near the main door. They were laughing and talking about their weekend plans. One girl had her feet up on the bench. A boy was playing with some kind of electronic device. "They do not look like they want to learn about war," Morrison said. "That is exactly why they need you," Helen replied. An hour later, Morrison stood outside his new classroom. Through the glass door, he could see 25 students sitting at their desks. They were all looking at their personal computers, or talking to each other. None of them seemed interested in learning. Morrison opened the door and walked in. The talking stopped. The students looked at him with curious eyes. Some of them stared at his metal arm. Others looked at the scars on his face. "I am Colonel Morrison," he said. "I will be teaching you tactical warfare." A girl in the front row raised her hand. She had long black hair and intelligent eyes. "Sir, are you the Jake Morrison who fought in the Centauri Wars?" "Yes," Morrison said simply. "Cool," said a boy with red hair. "Did you really kill 100 aliens with just a knife?" Morrison looked at the boy for a long moment. "War is not about killing, cadet. It is about surviving. It is about protecting the people you care about." The girl in the front row rolled her eyes. Her name tag said Chang. She whispered to the boy next to her, "Great, another old soldier who wants to tell us war stories." Morrison heard her but did not say anything. He walked to the front of the classroom and turned on the big screen. "Today we will talk about the Battle of Kepler Station," he said. Several students groaned. Chang raised her hand again. "Sir, we already studied that battle in our history class. It was 15 years ago. Why do we need to learn about old battles?" Morrison looked at her. "Because those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." "But sir," said another student, a boy named Rivera, "we have much better technology now. We have AI systems that can fight battles for us. We have drones and smart weapons. We do not need to fight like people did in the old days." Morrison nodded slowly. "Tell me, Cadet Rivera, what happens when your eye system stops working?" "That cannot happen, sir. Our systems are too advanced to fail." "The Vector thought the same thing," Morrison said. "They had technology that was far better than ours. Their ships were faster, their weapons were stronger, and their computers were smarter. But they still lost." A boy named Kim laughed. "Sir, that was because humans got lucky. If we fought them again today, We would win easily with our new weapons. Morrison walked over to Kim's desk. Cadet Kim, have you ever been in a real fight? Well, no sir, but I have done hundreds of combat simulations. A simulation is not real combat, Morrison said. In a simulation, you can restart if you die. In real combat, there's no second chance. Chang spoke up again. Sir, with respect those old battles do not matter anymore. Modern warfare is about strategy and technology, not about hand-to-hand combat and desperate last stands. Morrison turned to look at the whole class. You think war has changed. You think your computers and robots make you safe. Let me tell you about Kepler Station. He pressed a button and the screen showed a picture of a space station. It was huge, with metal arms reaching out like the legs of a spider. Kepler Station was our main supply base in the outer colonies, Morrison began. It had the best defenses we could build. Smart missiles, AI-controlled guns, and a fleet of robot fighters. The computers said it could not be taken. The students were listening now, but Morrison could see they were not really interested. The Vector came with a fleet of 200 ships. Our computers calculated that we could destroy them easily. But the aliens did something we did not expect. Morrison pressed another button. The screen showed a battle in space, but the human ships were not moving. They used a weapon that shut down all of our electronic systems. Our smart weapons stopped working. Our robot fighters crashed. Our computers went dead. In 5 minutes, we went from having the most advanced military in the galaxy to having nothing but basic weapons and human courage. Kim raised his hand. But sir, we have protections against that kind of attack now. Do we? Morrison asked. Are you willing to bet your life on it? The room was quiet for a moment. Then Chang spoke up. Sir, even if our systems failed, we could just call for help. We have communication systems that cannot be jammed. Morrison smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Cadet Chang, during the siege of Kepler Station, we were cut off from all help for 3 months. No communication, no supply ships, no rescue. Just 5,000 humans against an alien army that wanted to kill every one of us. So what happened? Asked a quiet girl in the back row. We fought with everything we had, Morrison said. We used kitchen knives as weapons. We made bombs out of cleaning supplies. We set traps in the corridors and fought room by room. We did not fight like soldiers. We fought like animals backed into a corner. Rivera shook his head. That sounds primitive, sir. Surely there was a better way. The better way failed when our computers died, Morrison said. All we had left was human stubbornness and the refusal to give up. The bell rang, ending the class. The students packed up their things and began to leave. As Chang walked past Morrison's desk, she stopped. Sir, those stories are interesting, but they are just history. We live in a different time now. We have learned from those mistakes. Morrison looked at her with tired eyes. I hope you are right, Cadet. I really hope you are right. After all the students left, Morrison sat alone in the empty classroom. Through the window, he could see the young cadets walking across the campus, laughing and talking about their classes. They had no idea how dangerous the universe could be. They had grown up in peace and safety, and they believed it would last. Forever. Morrison touched the scars on his face and thought about his friends who had died in the war. They had died so these young people could live in peace. But peace made people soft. It made them forget that there were things in the dark spaces between stars that would kill them. Without a second thought, he hoped Admiral Carter was wrong. He hoped these students would never need to use the lessons he was trying to teach them. But deep in his heart, he knew that the peace would not last forever. It never did. 2 weeks had passed since Morrison's first class. The students still looked at him like he was a museum piece. Every day, they came to his classroom with their computers and their confident smiles. They listened to his stories about the war. But he could see in their eyes that they thought he was just an old man living in the past. Today was different. Today Morrison had planned a special lesson. "Put away your computers," he said as the students filed into the classroom. Chang looked up from her desk. "Sir, we need our computers for the tactical analysis program." "No computers today," Morrison said. "We are going to the simulation room." The students looked at each other with excitement. The simulation room was where they practiced combat using virtual reality. They loved it because they could fly spaceships and fire weapons without any real danger. Morrison led them down the hall to a large white room filled with computers and VR helmets. The students rushed to their stations, eager to begin. "Today we will simulate the defense of a space station," Morrison said. "You will work in teams of 5. Your job is to protect the station from enemy attack." Kim raised his hand. "Sir, what kind of enemies are we fighting?" "You will see," Morrison said with a small smile. The students put on their helmets and the simulation began. Morrison watched from his control station as they took command of their virtual ships and weapons. The enemy ships appeared on their screens, alien vessels that looked like the Vector ships from the old war. At first, everything went perfectly for the students. Their AI systems locked onto the enemy ships. Their smart missiles fired automatically. Their robot fighters swarmed out to attack. Chang's team destroyed 3 enemy ships in the first minute. "This is easy," Rivera said over the communication system. "These old aliens do not stand a chance against our technology." Morrison smiled and pressed a button on his control panel. Suddenly, all the screens in the simulation went dark. The students' weapons stopped working. Their AI systems shut down. Their robot fighters crashed into space debris. "What happened?" Chang shouted. "My systems are not working." "Sir, there must be a bug in the program," Kim said, pulling off his helmet. "Put your helmet back on, Cadet," Morrison said. "The simulation is not over." "But our weapons do not work," Rivera complained. "Then use something that does work," Morrison replied. The students put their helmets back on. On their screens, they could see the alien ships getting closer to their space station. Without their advanced weapons, they had no idea what to do. "Sir, this is not fair," Chang said. "You broke our systems on purpose." "War is not fair," Morrison said. "The enemy does not care if your systems work or not." One team gave up completely. They sat back in their chairs and waited for the simulation to end. Another team tried to restart their computers over and over again, but nothing worked. Only Rivera's team kept trying. They found that they still had basic controls for their ship. They could move and they could fire simple weapons that did not need computer guidance. "We can ram the enemy ships," Rivera said to his teammates. "That is crazy," one of them replied. "We will die." "We are going to die anyway if we do nothing," Rivera said. His team flew their ship straight at the nearest alien vessel. They crashed into it and both ships exploded. But the sacrifice gave another human ship time to get into position. Morrison watched with interest. Finally, one of the students was starting to understand. The simulation ended with the space station destroyed and most of the human ships gone. The students took off their helmets and looked angry. "That was impossible, sir," Chang said. "Nobody could win that scenario." "Really?" Morrison asked. He pressed another button and a new image appeared on the main screen. This is what actually happened at Kepler Station when the Vector used their jamming weapon. The screen showed a recording from the real battle. The students watched as human defenders, cut off from their advanced systems, used whatever they could find to fight back. They saw soldiers firing old-fashioned projectile weapons. They saw engineers building bombs from spare parts. They saw people working together without computers to guide them. "But sir," Kim said, "that was 15 years ago. We have better protection now. Our systems cannot be jammed like that." Morrison looked at him sadly. That is what the defenders of Kepler Station thought too. They had the best protection available at that time. After class, Morrison walked to Admiral Carter's office. She was sitting behind her desk, reading reports from the outer colonies. "How are the students doing?" she asked. "They are learning, but slowly," Morrison said. "They still believe their technology will save them." Carter looked worried. "Jake, I need to show you something." She handed him a datapad. On the screen was a report from a colony called New Perth. 3 days ago, New Perth lost contact with the colonial authority, Carter said. "We sent a scout ship to investigate." Morrison read the report. The colony was gone. All 50,000 people had disappeared. The buildings were still standing, but there were no bodies, no signs of a fight, no clues about what had happened. "This looks familiar," Morrison said quietly. "That is what I was afraid you would say," Carter replied. "The Vector used to do this in the early days of the war. They would take entire colonies and leave no trace." Morrison felt a cold chill run down his spine. "But the Vector are gone. We destroyed their fleet at the Battle of Earth." "We destroyed the fleet at sea," Carter said. "But what if some of them escaped? What if they have been hiding and rebuilding?" The next day, Morrison changed his lesson plan. Instead of teaching history, he decided to teach survival. "Today we will learn how to fight without computers," he announced to his class. The students groaned. Chang raised her hand. "Sir, why would we need to know that? Our systems are completely reliable." Morrison walked over to the wall and pressed a switch. All the lights in the classroom went out. The students' computers shut down. Even their digital watches stopped working. "Your systems just failed," Morrison said in the darkness. "What do you do now?" "Turn the power back on," Rivera said. "You cannot. The enemy has destroyed your power grid." "Call for help," Kim suggested. "Your communication systems are down too." "This is stupid," Chang said. "This would never happen in real life." Morrison turned the lights back on. "Cadet Chang, want you to research the siege of New Babylon. Write a report on how Captain Susan Hayes defended her colony for 3 months without any computer systems." "Sir, that is ancient history," Chang complained. "It is recent enough to save your life," Morrison replied. That evening, Morrison sat in his small apartment reading the latest reports from the frontier. 3 more colonies had gone silent in the past week. Each time, the same pattern. All communications cut off. No distress calls. No survivors found when rescue ships arrived. He thought about his students and their confidence in their technology. They reminded him of himself when he was young. Before the war taught him that machines could fail and computers could be fooled. But human determination was harder to break. Morrison looked at the picture on his desk. It showed his old unit from the war, 12 soldiers who had fought beside him at Kepler Station. Only 3 of them had survived the war, and Morrison was the only one still alive. He picked up his pen and began writing a new lesson plan. Tomorrow he would teach his students about improvised weapons. The day after that, he would show them how to fight in complete darkness. He would teach them everything he knew about surviving when all the technology failed. Morrison hoped he was being too careful. He hoped that the missing colonies were just a coincidence, that there was a simple explanation for what was happening on the frontier. But in his heart, he knew better. The war was not over. It had just been waiting for humanity to get comfortable and forget the lessons written in blood among the stars. He thought about Chang and her confident dismissal of old tactics. Soon, she might need those ancient skills to stay alive. Morrison just hoped he could teach her enough before it was too late. The emergency alarm woke Morrison at 3 in the morning. The red lights in his room flashed on and off while a voice spoke over the Academy's communication system. "All senior staff report to the command center immediately. This is not a drill." Morrison grabbed his uniform and ran through the halls. Other instructors were running too, their faces worried and confused. Morrison had heard this alarm before, during the war. It meant something very bad had happened. Admiral Carter was waiting in the command center with a room full of officers. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking slightly. "Gentlemen, we have a situation," she said. 30 minutes ago, we lost contact with the entire Proxima colony system. 4 planets, 23 million people, gone silent all at once. Morrison felt his blood turn cold. One colony going quiet could be an accident. 4 planets at the same time meant something else entirely. "Ma'am, what was the last transmission from Proxima?" asked Colonel Barnes, the Academy's engineering instructor. "A distress call that lasted exactly 7 seconds, Carter replied. "The operator said unknown ships approaching, they look like, and then nothing." Morrison stepped forward. "Admiral, I need to see the transmission data." Carter nodded and played the recording. Morrison listened to the panicked voice of the communications operator, and in the background, he could hear something that made his scars ache. It was a sound he remembered from the war, the deep, rhythmic pulsing of vector engines. "It's them," Morrison said quietly. "The Vector are back." The room exploded with questions and arguments. Several officers insisted it was impossible. The Vector fleet had been destroyed 15 years ago. There were no survivors. "We need to send a battle fleet to investigate," said Captain Moore from the Orbital Defense Command. "No," Morrison said firmly. "If we send a fleet, we will lose it. The Vector know how to fight our modern ships. They have been watching us, learning our weaknesses." Carter looked at Morrison with tired eyes. "Then what do you suggest?" "Send a small ship with a volunteer crew. Someone who knows how to fight when the computers stop working." 2 hours later, Morrison stood in the Academy's main hall addressing all the students. Word had spread quickly about the missing colonies, and the cadets looked scared for the first time since he had arrived. "The situation is serious," Morrison said. "We do not know exactly what happened to the Proxima system, but we must prepare for the worst." Chang raised her hand. "Sir, is it true that the Vector are back?" Morrison paused before answering. "We believe so, yes." The hall erupted in frightened whispers. These students had grown up hearing stories about the Vector, but they had never expected to face them. Kim stood up. "Sir, what do we do? Our parents told us the war was over." "The war is never over," Morrison said. "It just sleeps sometimes. And now it is waking up." Rivera raised his hand. "Sir, can our fleet defeat them?" Morrison looked at the young faces staring up at him. A month ago, these same students had laughed at his war stories. Now they looked to him for answers. "Our fleet is strong," Morrison said, "but the Vector are smart. They will not fight us the same way they did before. They have been watching US, learning about our new technology. They know how to turn our own weapons against us." That afternoon, Morrison gathered his advanced tactical class in the simulation room. Instead of the usual 25 students, he had asked for volunteers. Only 12 had stayed. Sean was there, along with Rivera, Kim, and 9 others. "Today we are going to learn something different," Morrison said. "We are going to learn how to fight Vector ships with nothing but basic weapons." "Sir, is that even possible?" asked a student named Lopez. "It is the only way," Morrison replied. "The Vector have developed new jamming technology. When they attack, all of our advanced systems will fail. Our smart missiles will fall dead in space. Our AI targeting computers will shut down. Our robot fighters will crash." Morrison activated the simulation. On the screen, a single human ship faced 3 Vector vessels. "Your job is to survive and, if possible, win," Morrison said. The students took their positions. At first, they tried to use their normal tactics. They fired smart missiles and deployed robot fighters. But just like in Morrison's earlier simulation, all their advanced systems failed. "This is impossible," Chang said. "How can one ship fight 3? Think," Morrison said. "What do you have that still works?" Rivera checked his controls. Basic engines, basic weapons, and manual targeting. What else? Morrison asked. Kim looked puzzled. I don't understand, sir. You have something the Vector do not have, Morrison said. You have human creativity. The students struggled with the simulation for an hour. Most of the time, the ship was destroyed within minutes. But slowly, they began to understand. They learned to use asteroids as cover. They discovered that ramming attacks could work if timed correctly. They found that human unpredictability could confuse the alien ships. After class, Chang approached Morrison. Her attitude had changed completely from the first day. Sir, I have been reading about Captain Susan Hayes and the siege of New Babylon, she said. Morrison nodded. What did you learn? She held out for 3 months against impossible odds, Chang said. But sir, how did she do it? The Vector had superior numbers and better technology. Morrison smiled. She did it by refusing to give up. Every time the Vector thought they had won, she found a new way to fight back. She used mining equipment as weapons. She turned the colony's own systems into traps. She made the aliens pay. For every corridor, every room, every inch. But in the end she died, Chang said quietly. Yes, Morrison said. But the colony survived. 20,000 people lived because one woman refused to surrender. That evening, Morrison was called to another emergency meeting. Admiral Carter looked even more worried than before. Jake, we have a problem, she said. The Joint Chiefs want to send the entire Third Fleet to investigate the Proxima system. Morrison shook his head. That would be a disaster. The Vector want us to send our fleet. They are probably waiting for it. Then what do you suggest? Let me take a small ship with some of the advanced students, Morrison said. We can scout the system and report back. Jake, that's a suicide mission. I cannot ask you to do that. Morrison looked at his old friend. Helen, these students need to see real combat before the main attack comes. They need to understand what they are fighting for. Carter was quiet for a long moment. How many students? 12. The ones who volunteered for the advanced training. They are just kids, Jake. I was just a kid when the war started, Morrison said. War does not care how old you are. The next morning, Morrison addressed his 12 volunteers in the hangar bay. Behind him sat the destroyer USS Valiant, a small but fast ship that could carry a crew of 15. Yesterday you were students, Morrison said. Today you are soldiers. We are going to the Proxima system to see what happened there. It will be dangerous. Some of you may not come back. He looked at each of their faces. Chang stood straight and determined. Rivera nodded with grim understanding. Kim looked scared, but ready. If anyone wants to leave, now is the time, Morrison said. None of them moved. Sir, Chang said, we want to go with you. We want to learn how to fight like you did. Morrison felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. These young people were about to see the worst that the universe could offer, but they were also about to discover what it meant to be human. Then let's go, Morrison said. It's time to show the Vector that humans do not give up easily. As the USS Valiant lifted off from the Academy's landing pad, Morrison looked back at the beautiful white buildings one last time. He wondered if any of them would live to see this place again. But he also knew that whatever happened in the Proxima system, these 12 students would learn the most important lesson of all, that courage was not about having the best weapons or the smartest computers. Courage was about standing up and fighting when everything else had failed. The USS Valiant moved through space toward the Proxima system. Morrison sat in the captain's chair while his 12 students worked at the ship's control stations. They had been traveling for 2 days, and the closer they got to their destination, the quieter everyone became. Chang was at the navigation station. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, but Morrison could see she was nervous. Rivera monitored the weapon systems, checking and rechecking everything. Kim watched the communication equipment, hoping to hear some signal from the missing colonies. "Sir, we are approaching the outer edge of the Proxima system," Chang reported. Morrison looked at the main screen. Space looked normal here. Stars twinkled in the distance, and there was no sign of any battle. "All stop," Morrison ordered. "Kim, scan for any transmissions." Kim worked at his station for several minutes. "Nothing, sir." Complete radio silence. "Lopez, what do the sensors show?" Lopez checked his readings. "Sir, the sensors are picking up debris around the fourth planet. Looks like pieces of ships and space stations." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. "Take us in slowly. Everyone stay alert." As they moved deeper into the system, the destruction became clear. Proxima 4 had been a beautiful world with 3 large cities and a population of 8 million people. Now it was a dead rock covered in ash and smoke. "My God," whispered Rivera. "What happened here?" Morrison had seen this before. The Vector harvested the planet. They took everything useful and destroyed the rest. Chang looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, you mean the people are all dead?" "Yes," Morrison said quietly. "All of them." The ship continued toward the inner planets. Each world told the same story. Cities turned to ash, orbital stations destroyed, all life gone. 23 million people had simply vanished. "Sir," Kim called out, "I am getting something on the long-range scanners. 3 large objects near Proxima 1. Morrison moved to Kim's station and looked at the display. 3 dark shapes were moving slowly around the system's main planet. They were too far away to see clearly, but Morrison recognized their outline. "Vector ships," he said. "They are still here." The students looked at each other with fear. These were the first enemy ships any of them had ever seen. "What do we do, sir?" asked Rivera. Morrison thought for a moment. "We need to get closer and learn what we can. But first, we need to prepare for what is going to happen." He turned to face all of his students. "Listen carefully. In a few minutes, those ships are going to detect us. When they do, they will try to disable our systems with their jamming weapon. All of our computers will stop working. Our smart weapons will fail. We will have to fight with basic controls and manual targeting." Chang raised her hand. "Sir, should we try to run?" "We cannot outrun them," Morrison said. "Our only chance is to fight smart and use everything I have taught you." Morrison moved to the weapon control station. "Rivera, I want you to prepare the emergency charges. If we get the chance, we might need to ram one of their ships." "Sir, that would destroy us too," Rivera said. "Maybe, but it would also give Earth time to prepare for what is coming." Kim suddenly looked up from his station. "Sir, the enemy ships are moving. They have seen us." On the main screen, 3 sleek alien vessels turned toward the Valiant. They were beautiful in a deadly way, like knives made of metal and shadow. "Here we go," Morrison said. "Remember everything I taught you. Trust your training, not your fear." The Vector ships approached quickly. When they were close enough, Morrison could see the strange symbols carved into their hulls. The aliens had not changed much in 15 years. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge went dark. The lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. "All systems down," reported Chang. "We are flying blind." "No, we are not," Morrison said calmly. He moved to a manual control panel that most modern ships did not even have anymore. "We still have basic engine control and emergency weapons." The students watched as Morrison worked with switches and dials instead of computers. His scarred hands moved with practiced skill over controls that looked ancient compared to their normal equipment. "Chang, manual navigation." "Use the backup compass," Morrison ordered. "Rivera, load the projectile weapons." "Kim, try to raise Earth on the emergency radio." The first Vector ship fired. A beam of energy hit the Valiant and shook the entire ship. Several students fell out of their chairs. "Return fire," Morrison said. Rivera pressed a button, and the ship's old-style cannon fired. The projectile missed the alien ship, but it was close enough to get their attention. "Sir, I cannot hit anything without computer targeting," Rivera said. "Then learn to aim by eye," Morrison replied. "Your ancestors hunted with spears. You can fire a cannon." The battle continued for 20 minutes. The Valiant was smaller and slower than the alien ships, but Morrison used every trick he had learned during the war. He hid behind asteroids, used the planet's gravity to change direction, and made the ship move in ways the aliens did not expect. "Lopez, damage report," Morrison called out. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. "We have lost half our weapons," Lopez replied. Morrison looked at the main screen. 2 of the Vector ships were still attacking. The third one seemed to be having problems. Rivera's cannon shots had finally found their target. "Sir, we are not going to win this fight," Chang said. Morrison smiled grimly. "We are not trying to win, Cadet. We are trying to learn." He pressed several buttons on his control panel. "Kim, are you ready with that emergency transmission?" "Yes, sir, but the signal will not be very strong." "Send it now." "Tell Earth what we found here. Tell them the Vector have new ships and new weapons. Tell them to prepare for a full invasion." Kim sent the message just as another alien energy beam hit the ship. This time, the damage was serious. The ship's engines began to fail. "Sir, we are dead in space," reported Rivera. Morrison looked around at his students. They were scared, but they were not giving up. Even Kim, who had been the most afraid, was still working at his station. "Chang, how long until the nearest Vector ship reaches us?" Morrison asked. Chang checked her instruments. 3 minutes, sir." Morrison moved to the weapon storage locker and began handing out projectile weapons to his students. These were simple guns that worked without computers. "Sir, what are we doing?" asked Lopez. "We are going to board their ship," Morrison said. The students stared at him in shock. "Sir, that is insane," Rivera said. "Maybe," Morrison replied. "But it is also the last thing they will expect. The Vector think humans are weak because we depend on our technology. Let's show them what happens when humans fight with nothing but courage." The alien ship came alongside the Valiant. Morrison could see figures moving behind the dark windows. The Vector were preparing to board the human ship. "Remember," Morrison said to his students, "the Vector are stronger and faster than humans. But they are not smarter. They follow patterns. Be unpredictable." The airlock door exploded inward. 6 tall alien warriors entered the ship. They wore dark armor and carried energy weapons that hummed with power. Morrison and his students were waiting for them. The fight was brutal and quick. The aliens expected the humans to surrender or run. Instead, they found 12 young people who had learned how to fight like their ancestors. Rivera used a fire axe to destroy an alien's weapon. Chang threw a grenade made from engine parts. Kim, who had been afraid of everything, stood over Morrison when the colonel fell wounded and held off 2 aliens with nothing but an old projectile rifle. When it was over, 5 of the alien warriors were dead and 1 was captured. Morrison was badly injured, but alive. 3 of his students had been hurt, but they would recover. "Sir, we did it," Chang said, helping Morrison to his feet. Morrison looked around at his students. They were no longer the soft, overconfident cadets he had met months ago. They were soldiers now, tested in real combat. "Yes, we did," Morrison said. "And now Earth will be ready when the main fleet arrives." The captured alien warrior looked at Morrison with what might have been respect. In broken human language it said, "You fight like the old ones. We did not expect this." Morrison smiled through his pain. "That is your mistake. Humans always fight hardest when everything seems hopeless." 6 months later, Morrison stood in front of a new class at the academy. His arm was in a sling from the battle, but his eyes were bright. The students in front of him were different from his first class. They listened carefully to every word. They took notes. They asked serious questions. Chang, now wearing the uniform of a lieutenant, helped him with the lesson. Rivera and Kim had been promoted and assigned to the Earth Defense Fleet. All 12 of his students from the Proxima mission had become teachers themselves, passing on the lessons they had learned. Today we will talk about the Battle of Proxima, Morrison began. It was a small fight, but it taught us something important. It showed us that humans do not need the best weapons or the smartest computers to win. We just need the courage to keep fighting when everything else fails. A young cadet in the front row raised her hand. "Sir, is it true that you boarded an alien ship with just basic weapons?" Morrison looked at Chang, who smiled and nodded. "Yes," Morrison said. "And if you pay attention to your lessons, someday you might have to do the same thing. Because the universe is a dangerous place, and the only thing standing between humanity and the dark is people."